Welcome to Q6 at Q Station in Sydney, Australia. I am James Dedarian, Director of the Centre for International Security Studies at the University of Sydney, and your host for the annual Project Q Symposium, Quantum Metaphysics, Heuristics, Aesthetics, and Ethics. Now, with the support of the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and also through the Australian-India Cyber and Critical Technology Partnership, we want to start putting these findings into practice. And if day one was the culmination of a 6-year project to explore all these implications of a potential quantum revolution, day two is our sort of opening foray into how artists, writers, the global strategists, and social scientists are beginning to put those findings into practice. So we can promise you an edifying and entertaining journey through all aspects of quantum innovation.
Each of these presentations touching on issues of policy, governance, digital culture, and law provoke us to think in different ways, or will provoke us to think in different ways as we approach the kind of horizons that quantum technology present us with and the new kinds of dilemmas we're confronted to address.
This area of thinking about responsible development of quantum technology has really taken off in the past couple of years. And it's largely been led by interest from, I would say, the younger community. Students have particularly been interested in putting foresight into how we go ahead and integrate our stunning discoveries over the past decades and continuing new discoveries into kind of a framework which will make sense as large corporations, governments start to use these kinds of technologies.
The high-level principles, who could argue with those high-level principles? And that's what I want to talk about, because I think that unless we drill down into some of the more boring details, I don't want to say boring, more concrete, I'm not sure we're accomplishing very much with those details.
There is no magic wand, but for our society to be quantum ready and resilient, it will require a whole of society approach, from research industry to workforce to law and policy, and also maybe most importantly, quantum literacy.
And what I'm imagining is the future of policy and governance in the age of quantum computing. And it boils down to this question: how will we evaluate quantum computing outcomes in social contexts? The challenges facing artificial intelligence are often considered questions of ethics, and I feel like this is just going to be exponentially exacerbated when it comes to quantum computing. And the reason is that quantum computing destabilizes regulatory and policy regimes that rely on stability of measurement.
If we take quantum mechanics seriously, it does put an incredible responsibility on individuals and others on, if you really are creating the world or worlds through your decisions, through every decision tree, what does that mean ethically? What does that mean socially? I just wonder, was that scare or that fright that you mentioned more than once in Aurora related to one aspect of that?
Well, in Aurora, it was very situational. These were people on a gigantic starship that they utterly relied on. It was their world. They were inside it. They were up to 12 light years away from Earth. It was that starship or nothing in terms of their own lives. And the starship was being run in part by a quantum computer. And it's maybe the third or the fourth generation of humans who have had to educate themselves inside that starship. How many of those humans, 2,000 at a time, a rolling population, and now you're to the third generation, how many of them really understand quantum mechanics? When, even Bohr said you ought not to understand it or you've got it wrong.
It's the unbridled potential of quantum that is so intriguing, I think. And the fact that, we can hypothesize what quantum's going to do, but in many respects, we don't quite know still. And even when you look at the kind of investment patterns in quantum, it's almost, hedging money in a way of, well, we don't quite know what the results would be, but we know they're significant. Therefore, it's worth the billions of dollars that are now being poured in. And you see that from certain governments and certainly from venture capitalists.
Warm greetings from New Delhi, India. We are excited to be working with our partners at the University of Sydney on a meta-ethics project on quantum And we are delighted to be able to participate in this very important conversation that deals with perhaps one of the most important technology questions of our times. How will quantum technologies change the way we engage with business, with society, and with each other? What are the benefits that quantum technologies could deliver? And what are the challenges that will accompany the quantum revolution?
Quantum technologies are quickly moving from fictional ideas to actionable realities with real-world implications. Applications such as quantum communication, computing, and quantum internet, they all have the potential to change the way we live our lives. So there are enormous benefits, but there could also be risks. To me, a bigger aspect, especially from an ethical perspective, is quantum divide. The gap between those who can and are able to benefit from the quantum technologies and those who are not. Narrowing down or closing the quantum divide will include efforts at quantum and other emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, robotics, how they can help societies and how this access can be made to larger sections of the global society.
The question becomes, what are the very tangible areas where you can imagine, whether it is India or whether it is a coalition of countries, stepping up and enabling this broader leapfrogging so that these technologies have, a very positive impact?
Are there genuinely new responsibility and ethical questions that are rise to the surface because of quantum information theoretic or quantum information technology advances that are different than simply say increasing the speed of a computation, the efficiency in which it's done. Does physically guaranteed security around quantum key distribution? Obviously it's different fundamentally than informationally theoretic guaranteed security that we run on now. But does it change the discourse around security?
I think what's interesting here is that we are very much working between the values of the practical and the symbolic. And there is enormous symbolic power in quantum, regardless of whether it actually does anything at the practical level or not. And here I would turn to history. And certainly we've seen this play out before. We could go back to the Cold War history around computation that Paul Edwards writes about beautifully in The Closed World, where, of course, it was about the history of American global power and articulating artificial intelligence then as a way of really rhetorically taking the center position as having an offset that nobody else would have. And again, we've seen the offsets move over time, and certainly quantum could be positioned in some ways as the fourth offset.
What if every university institute had a sister institute, and every quantum technology company had a sister company, and not just in a kind of symbolic exchange, ritualistic way, but actually structured so that their fates, their economic fates were bound together. These kind of a sort of metaphoric entanglement of institutions. And I think there's still ideas in the Cold War period of these efforts to tunnel through that we can tap.
I do think that after bushfires in 2019, the pandemic of 2021, we've been through the fire. And as I said before, the light that came up through the cracks was science. I don't want to fetishize science, but we have to give also credit to the people who've mitigated a lot of the worst of COVID and also have helped bring about the vaccines. And we're looking to science to help us through the next stage. But we are in an interpandemic. We are in a moment of climate change. We are facing global crises, and it's a wake-up call. And we're paying attention to it, and we're listening to it. And we're going to carry on with this project thanks to DFAT and the Sydney Quantum Academy and the Carnegie Corporation of New York and the University of Sydney and all the other good folks out there who are making these kind of long bets. So thank you all. Be safe, be well, be kind, and over and out.